Hello, 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 and welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so happy you are all here. My name is Hunter. My pronouns are he, they, and you are at the Power to Fly Chat and Learn series with a family favorite. Rachel Serwetz is here. I'll introduce her in just a moment. Before we get started, feel free to use the chat, say hello, where you calling in from. I'm hailing from New York City. Pace Pecani sauce. This is not a paid promotion, just an old ad dating myself. So I'm so glad you're here. Please feel free to use the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. Feel free to turn on your camera. It's a great way to connect with Rachel and myself. This is an interactive experience. You get to participate. You get to ask questions. We might even do a little something Rachel's got cooked up. So more about that in a moment. We are recording, so you will get a rewatch link in the next couple of days, and you can also find it posted in our YouTube channel. And if anything is resonating with you as well, write that in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ask your questions often and early. This next hour is for you. So any of those burning questions you have on the topic today, we would love to hear from you. And Rachel is a well of knowledge that has so much insight to share and such a great communicator. So more about Rachel. Rachel's early professional experience was at Goldman Sachs in operations and at Bridgewater Associates in HR. From there, she was trained as a coach at NYU and became a certified coach through the International Coach Federation. She worked in HR research at Aon Hewitt and attained her technology MBA at NYU Stern. Throughout her career, she has helped hundreds of professionals with career exploration. For the past 5 years, she has been building her company, Woken, which is an online career exploration platform to coach professionals through the process of clarifying their ideal job and career path. So cool, so much resource here. So please welcome Rachel. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I am going to get started and make sure I can share my slides. So give me a super quick second here. All right. Can you guys see this? Can you all see this rather? Okay, beautiful. And what I'm going to do is make sure I get my chat up here. So please feel free to use the chat as much as you want. All righty. So yeah, we went through my background a little bit. Happy to dive into my journey at any point if that's helpful, but I'll skip over that for now. We are going to start with understanding what is a professional summary. So first and foremost, this is going to help you own your story. We want you to tailor your story in a way that actually helps it make sense for other people listening as to where you want to go and how does your background tie into your strengths, which ties into your direction. When it feels seamless and it feels like authentic and compelling and it makes sense to you, it's going to make sense to them. So this is the type of stuff that we can work on behind the scenes before you go network or before you go do an interview, and even for your written materials. So we're owning your story, we're tailoring your brand, and we're making sure that others don't have to guess, right? So if you have a resume without, I know it's been kind of the age-old question, should I have the summary on the top of my resume? I personally believe if you can do it in such a way that's really specific and not just using the jargon that everybody uses. We're all great communicators and problem solvers, right? So if you can really make it specific and meaningful and structured and clear and organized, it can help make sense of who you are so that someone else doesn't have to guess. If they're only looking at your past jobs, they're going to have to make a story about who you are. So this is a great way of doing a brief interpretation of what you want them to know. It's still brief, but remember, you have the time on your side to say, how do I want to craft this? And let me only put that on my resume in the way that makes really good sense to me. You can also use it on your LinkedIn about section. And again, this is the foundation for the tell me about yourself question. So you can use this in a verbal way and you can use it in a written way. So I'm getting ahead of myself because this is already on my slide here. It's for resume, LinkedIn, tell me about yourself, or you could even record a video. And, I love a good 1 minute, pop it on YouTube. You can send that link. You can even attach that link to your resume. People can meet you by way of video as well. We can talk about this a little later, but just a quick note that the walk me through your background versus tell me about yourself in an interview, two separate things. So this professional summary is actually the quick overview of the tell me about yourself. And if you want to touch on the other question later, I'm happy to come back to that. Does this all make sense so far? Please chime in the chat if you have questions, but I want to make sure we have the lay of the land. Why are we here? What are we talking about? Great, beautiful, thank you. Okay, so we're actually going to do some hands-on stuff today. I don't know if everyone here was ready for this, but please grab a pen and paper, or of course you could do a digital notepad if you want, but I'm actually going to challenge you all, rather than just listening to me talk about a summary, I'm going to get you started drafting yours. And the thing with materials, people always get hung up and nervous that it has to be perfect. Remember, this is just a draft and it's just going within this community, and you don't even have to share it in the chat. So it's just for your eyes right now. And of course, if you ever wanted peer or mentor or coach's help and get another pair of eyes on it, you can. You don't have to publish this just yet, but we're going to get started. And I know Hunter's going to be my guinea pig, but please grab a pen and a paper, or you can type out into a notepad digitally. So yes, how to include part experience and a change of field. Morali, great question. Let's come back to that. So hang tight and hold that question, and make sure you ask that question back to me so I answer it, and Hunter will track it as well. So here we go. We're going to start. Okay. So the place I like to start is thinking about your areas of expertise. What I mean by that is functional skill sets, hard skills. So we're going to get to the soft skills later, which is kind of your personality and your values and your traits and how and why you're so great at things. But this is the hard skills, which means if you look at your background, and by the way, we do want to highlight the skills you want to use going forward. So there is a little bit of an art of, like, you don't have to be perfectly comprehensive. We want to highlight what you want to highlight. So what are some hard skills? So for example, Hunter is, event facilitation. Maybe he's doing that right now. Maybe he does event management. Maybe he does community management. Maybe he works on social media. I don't really know. And Hunter can tell us, but I put a few examples here. You want to think about what are the one or two words and phrases that represent those key functional skill sets, whether it's your current job or past, of your background. But if you had to pick 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these and highlight just a few that feels like the core areas, the areas of expertise, the things you're best at, greatest at, and want to use going forward. Remember, this is just your background. We're going to get into your strengths and your direction in terms of how can you expand on this? But this is just a little bit of an overview, a little bit of a summary. You're sort of shortlisting some of those key skills. I know it takes a little bit of brainstorming. Sometimes we have to open up the resume just to reference, what have I done? And it's okay if this takes more time. You can always come back to this to look at what were my past projects or what were my past roles. But for right now, I want to try to challenge you to come up with those, cherry picking the top of the list from current or a few of your previous roles. Any questions on just this component so far? Does this make sense? And by the way, feel free to be jotting down your thoughts. I'm sort of talking to give you that food for thought while you're brainstorming, but I will keep going for now. And I know this is, not giving you a ton of time, but this is something you can come back to continue to refine. So the next piece should be hopefully a little simpler, but what are the different industries, right? So remember, there's functional, which is what are you doing day to day, but also what about the sectors, the markets, the industries you've been at? What are the different companies and what were those industries of the company that you were a part of? How could you label those different industries? And the reason we include this is just to show that you have a broad array of areas, right? Maybe you've been in one industry the whole time and that's fine. But if you've been in a few different ones, it just shows that you have different perspectives. It actually shows that, you have that breadth of, you can sometimes bring knowledge and things from one industry to another. So it just shows that you've been around the block. And to me, that's always a good thing to show. Does that all make sense so far? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Now, we want to, when we move into your strengths, there's different ways to talk about your strengths. There's first what you're great at, and then there's sort of why and how you're great at it. So when I think about deliverables, I want to think about within the workplace, impact that you drive. Sometimes when you think about impact at a company, you're maybe expanding growth or sales or revenue or driving some growth, let's say, or maybe you're creating efficiencies, saving time, things like that. So sometimes it's expansion, sometimes it's reduction of something. It doesn't even have to be framed that way. It could be building partnership relationships, or it could be any number of things. But, this is still a little bit of those hard skills in terms of like, what kind of work-oriented like projects or deliverables or impact are you really, really great at? Now, there could be a long list, but in terms of this, we're going to come up with one sentence. So I like to very, very, very briefly maybe allude to one or two or three of these. And remember, we're going to craft this and we're going to wordsmith this a little later. So right now, just try to say it to yourself in your notes. It doesn't have to sound perfect just yet, but remind yourself, what are those key areas or projects or work deliverables that you think you're really great at or enjoy doing the most or drive the most impact? Okay, does that all make sense so far? Okay, then why and how are you so great at that, right? So maybe you're so great at building partnership relationships because you take a really human-oriented approach. Or maybe you're so great at driving process efficiencies because you're good at noticing patterns or optimizing inefficiencies. I'm sort of making it up as I go along, but what do you see? What are you good at? What traits about you make you especially good at those deliverables that we just mentioned, right? So I'll give you 30 seconds. I know I've been moving quickly. I'll give you a moment to keep doing this, and feel free to share in the chat if you want to share some things that you're brainstorming or if you have questions, but I'll give you a few seconds to just catch up and keep documenting some of your thoughts. Okay. Now, let's talk about your direction. And I'm going to teach you a little bit how to think about exploration. If you're not sure where you want to go next, that's okay. But for now, there's kind of two ways to talk about your direction. Either role titles and industries that you want to go work in, or anecdotally the type of work or impact that you want to have. But we all know ATS systems. So if you can put the role titles that you're searching for or striving for, this is a great way to get those keywords picked up of the types of work you really want to do, even if you've never done it before. Or you could just describe it more broadly. But a lot of people worry, oh, am I going to narrow myself in if I do this? I personally think it just simply helps people make sense of who you are and where you're going and where to place you. And it actually makes it easier for them to help place you and match you with the right opportunities. And it's okay, I would say, to list maybe one or two or three roles maximum, no more than that. And even if you do have three roles, it would be good for us to reflect separately, like which of those actually makes the most sense for you. So try to make it no more than three. And again, even if you have three, we should probably narrow it in. But where do you want to go? What type of work do you think you want to work on? And again, we will come back to how do you figure that out if you're not sure. And again, you could just briefly jot this down for right now. You may not know exactly, but any keywords that come to your head is good. Even if you're like, there's a certain project or a certain something you're interested in. For now, you could jot down whatever does come to your mind, and we could refine the phrasing a little later. Cool. I'm assuming this all makes sense so far. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So now we're going to try to craft this in a way that makes a little bit more sense, right? So that was sort of the brainstorm. Now it's like some sentences. So of course we want to be authentic, unique, specific, clear, and just not use generic words. This is the key with the summary. You have time on your side. So even though you're going to be concise, the reason we prep and plan and practice and try to wordsmith this carefully is because instead of saying, I'm a great communicator, I'm a great problem solver, dig a little deeper to say, what about communication am I so great at? What about problem solving am I so great at? Or what types of problems? Or why am I so great at that? You know, coming up with something that someone else isn't going to say in that same way, right? Something that's truly helping somebody get to know you. So dig deeper and use the time to reflect to come up with something that is your most authentic version of how you can explain who you are and what you're all about. And it's okay if that requires a little time to reflect on who you are. Maybe you need to go to a manager or a peer or colleague. You can't really say something if you've truly never done it. But sometimes there's phrases or titles you can use that somewhat represent your knowledge and your skill area, and it helps you showcase what you want to showcase, about where you want to go. So the title element can be creative. You don't have to use it if you just want to jump into your areas of expertise, but it can be a creative tool in certain ways to sort of call yourself what you want to call yourself, right? And then of course, so you're an XYZ professional with expertise in. Here, I only picked 3. I think you can do 4 or 5. Maybe, you want to make it not too wordy, but here it's data modeling, data visualization, and mobile app development. Again, this is an example. I made this up. And across the different industries. So across 2 industries or 3 industries or 4 industries. Sometimes if the sentence is getting too long, I'll do the industry as a separate, thing where you could just cut it after your functional skills, and then you could say experienced, period, space, experienced across XYZ industry. So if you need grammatically a little more breathing room, you can do that. So this is a rough example of the first sentence. There's definitely ways we can play around with it, but this is an initial framework you can get started with, and it takes the pieces from our brainstorm. Cool? Okay, now strengths. What do you do well? How and why do you do it well, right? So you're particularly great at something and why, right? And again, there's different ways to structure this, but we want to make it as, active voice and as easy to read as humanly possible. So when you're doing this in writing, you could say something like strengths in, and this is just an example, communicating project needs clearly amongst varied internal and external stakeholders, turning data into impactful stories to improve business operations, and building team camaraderie. This is a total example. And to be honest, this actually doesn't even add, why am I so great at it? So there's different ways of playing around, because if you feel like it makes more sense for you to just say your 3 strengths without explaining the why factor, and it's getting too long, there's different options for what is the best way of using this real estate for you. So these are just, giving you some food for thought, giving you some examples, and how to sort of explain what you're great at. And by the way, the beauty of this sentence, you can write whatever you want to write. So for example, can you use this space to describe the job you want? Now, maybe that job you want has projects from what you've done in the past. So you're still referencing things you've done, but maybe a portion of your previous role is something you want to go do more of. This sentence is your space to describe the thing people need to know about you, or what you want them to know, what you want to be working on, what you think you're the best at, right? What you enjoy the most. This is such a choice moment that helps you drive towards the direction you really want, right? And of course, we'll talk about how to get clarity if you're not sure where you want, but this is your choice to highlight what you want, okay? And then direction, right? So I like to say, instead of seeking, I like to say motivated by, or driven by, or we could come up with some synonyms, but motivated by certain opportunities to analyze and manage data in healthcare startups. So again, this is a little bit of a made up example, but you can talk about target role titles, or you could describe the work. I like to do role titles where you can, because again, that ATS system, it's going to help you to have those keywords. But yeah, when you string these 3 together, you notice it's only 3 sentences. So in 30 seconds or however long, this is the elevator pitch of who you are. When someone says, tell me about yourself, it's a hard question to answer, right? So this is an initial overview. You could add a little personal anecdote at the end about who you are. Sometimes do we need to factor in some education if you did a master's? Sometimes there's little things we may need to plug in quickly to this high level overview. Sometimes certifications or training, certain technical skills. Sometimes there's another brief component that you may need to add here if it's really critical or helpful. But this is just getting you started with how can I be concise and give a high level overview and introduction to who I am, right? This is just a super quick intro to, if you're not sure your direction, career exploration is a tool that is on your side, and it's a process. So if you're not sure where you want to go next, you can do a lot of reflection. You could do research. You can network with target professionals and reflect in order to come up with that clear direction. And that is a process I like to do before you start trying to put your branding together. If you're not sure where you want to go, sometimes it's hard to tell that story. So just know that there are steps you can take before you come up with a story if you're not sure what the story is, right? Okay. So I can go into greater detail, but this is a quick intro to that. Any questions or any volunteers? I think, of course, we can have Hunter try it. And this is a moment where I'm happy to give you feedback on how are you sounding or how is it coming across. And by the way, we can do feedback based on the written, or we could do feedback based on a little mock interview practice of, how would you actually introduce yourself? So if anyone wants to go, Pamela would love to have you volunteer. Do you want to do the sort of verbal, or do you want me to read the written? I think we should maybe try it out loud, but tell me what you're sort of willing to do. And of course, we can take a bunch of different volunteers, and we can also just do some questions. We have time for everything today. Cool, Claudia, that would be wonderful. Pamela, why don't we start? Hunter, they can unmute, correct? Or how does that work?
I can enable them to unmute. I just need to find Pamela. Oh my gosh. Rachel, this is such like a masterclass powerhouse workshop. I love this so much. It's so cool. I was like jotting away, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like all these neurons are like firing and stuff. So Pamela, welcome. You should be able to speak now. Hello, Pamela. And you can turn on your camera if you like, or you can just use your audio, whatever you prefer.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
I prefer to keep my camera off.
Okay, that's
Sure.
okay. So Pamela, what I'll do is I'll pretend we're sort of, it could be in an interview, or it could just be like, imagine you're at a networking event with a colleague and they say, tell me about yourself. It's kind of the same thing, but we'll do a little practice, and I'll just jot down some notes and feedback and thoughts, and I'll share those with you. How does that sound? Cool?
Yeah, it's cool for me.
Okay, so let's pretend, right? So Pamela, imagine this is the beginning of some professional conversation. I would love to hear a little bit about, an overview or an introduction. So tell me who you are.
Okay, my name is Pamela. I am a mechatronic engineer. I'm get graduated the last year. So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
That's okay. Take your time. Remember, this is just pretend. This is practice.
Okay. So I have experience in some project documentation. I like so much to I have knowledge in technical feasibility operation. I know about functioning of instrumentation systems, automation, and control process in fabrics. In my career, I have knowledge in things about automatization process. I'm sorry. And I don't know what else to say.
Okay, that was really good. I'm actually going to give you all a tip that I forgot to mention earlier.
Okay.
So when you have these 3 parts of the summary, use some what I call transition words. It's going to help remind yourself, what do you want to say next? So for example, and remember now, this is a framework that I sort of made up. And so they may not know your framework. And so you want to introduce the topic. So you can say something like, well, to share a little bit about my background, I have expertise in all these different things. And then you sort of list the areas. And then you could say, in terms of industries, I've worked across blah, 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 blah. So you introduce the idea, and then you could say something like, as far as my strengths or what I'm particularly great at, blah, 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 blah. And then you say, in terms of where I'm hoping to go next, or something along those lines. Maybe you could say the work I'm interested in pursuing, or something like that. You introduce the topic and then you start saying it. So that's a great way to try to, whenever you're doing interview prep, you kind of just want to memorize, like, not every word. You want to memorize like the structure. And so if you can just simply remember background, strengths, direction, and you introduce each of those ideas, then you can think on your feet and say, okay, what's my background? But you at least tell yourself, here's the topic I'm going to say next, right? Does that make sense? So I thought that was a really, really good start. And first of all, I love that you remember to say, hi, I'm Pamela, because I clearly forgot to remind you all to do that. So always say your name, things like that. I heard you talk about project documentation, technical ability, operations, instrumentation, systems, automation, things like that. So that was great. That sounded like a lot of functional areas of expertise. Again, this takes time. So I would keep writing down your thoughts. Let me put it this way. This is one of those few interview responses that maybe you end up memorizing 60 to 80%. It should still sound natural every time. Other interview responses, I think you're going to be even more natural and less memorized. But this is one of those where you can sort of come up with, how do I want to explain myself? And it's okay to really work on the written. And again, you're not going to make it sound rehearsed. The art is, you want to craft it, but you also don't want it to sound so memorized. And that's what's hard. And so, Pamela, I think that was an amazing start. I would keep writing, behind the scenes, just for yourself on a piece of paper, what's the background, the strengths, and the direction. So it does take a little bit of time to say, here's what I want to get across. And then I know I'm jumping into the out loud practice, but when you go to do this on your own time, take a little more time, wordsmith it on paper, and then you start practicing out loud, whether it's to a wall or to a friend. And so, the other thing with any interview prep, out loud practice is so underrated. So you just did it once, do it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row. Again, you're not memorizing, you're getting comfortable with, how can I think on my feet? And how can I get my point across concisely and clearly? It's not hard. That's why we practice. It is hard. It's not easy. That is why we practice this stuff. So take more time to keep working through it. But that was a really, really good start. Cool. We want to keep going, right? So Claudia,
Great.
I think you're up next.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi there. So I do have my summary from my resume that I kind of want to go through. It does have most of the framework parts, but it is missing probably the industries, because I do have that as a separate line item in my resume. And then I think I need to add the direction part that you mentioned. So let me go ahead and read this to you.
So Claudia, can I challenge you?
Yes.
Try to not look at it. And only because we're in practice right now. So the written, I could totally read that. And I'm happy to give you feedback on it. But just for the sake of, I think you're going to get really good practice right now. And I know it's not perfect. And I know we always need more time. But let's just see what happens if you try to say it just to me.
Oh, I haven't practiced it enough, though.
Well, if you want, I can come back to you, but why don't you take a second? And here's what I would suggest for anybody. Try to just ask yourself, what are the pieces, right? So background, strengths, direction, or maybe you want a slightly different structure the way that your resume has it, but just memorize, maybe there's 3 sentences, maybe there's 4. It's probably not a ton, because in 30, 45 seconds, you can't really say so many different things. So just ask yourself, what is the purpose or goal or idea of each sentence? And if you can just memorize that, the reason I say this is because when you write it, what ends up coming out of your mouth sometimes it can be totally different. So it's okay, you know, how you want to structure it today in today's call, but that's what I would suggest to anyone is challenge yourself to practice out loud. And you're never going to feel perfectly ready, but when you start, you're always going to be able to just improve from there. And this is a total safe space if you want to do it, or if you'd prefer to read it. I'm not going to say no, but you know, it's an opportunity.
I know it's an opportunity. I thank you for that. I just want to make sure that I have the components of it laid out right. And then I'll go to memorizing.
Okay. Do you want me to come back to you, or would you want to review what the components are that you do have?
No, let me go ahead and I won't read it word for word. Okay. But I will just glance to refer to kind of remind me.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So I am an accomplished product leader with a rare combination of product development and partnership management skills. I lead teams who leverage customer-centric and data-driven insights to design, develop, and launch B2B and B2C technology products. I've worked, I don't say that, but technology products for startups and Fortune 100 companies. I'm skilled in translating vision into actionable strategies, driving successful product launches across various platforms and industries.
Great. I love that. That was wonderful. That was such a great start. I like product leader as a title. Again, it depends what roles you want to go after. And if we want to be more specific with like a role title, but product leader can be nice if you want to be sort of broad, but also clear that you're, you know, so I get your direction there. Product development and then partnership management is interesting when you lead with those, because at first I was like, those sound different. And I didn't know if what you meant was like maybe stakeholder management and you're referring to those people as partners, because sometimes partnerships is like a real business function. So that's just something to notice is like, how do I perceive these words? Partners, stakeholders. Sometimes people refer to a client as a partner. You know, so be careful in resumes, because even though when you talk about a client, you may say partner, you just want to be really clear. And if your client face, you know, so partners or words like that with any kind of relationship, you want to be careful that you're being clear. Also, saying something like, I know this is kind of a small thing, but product development and partnership management skills, everything is like a skill. So that's just a word where it's not adding. You can just say, I'm great at product development and partnership management, period, or whatever, right? And then you also later said, I'm skilled in. So this is the interesting thing. It's like, what level, you know, that's up to interpretation. So using phrasing that is more meaningful to you, like my strengths, because that's your opinion. And of course they have to try to understand that in their own way. But what does skilled in even mean? So be very wary. I never want someone to over stress about the resume, but periodically, if you look at the resume once a week, right, you know, balance how much time goes into it, but it is that precious real estate. So every single word, you want to make it, what is the most specific, impactful word that I can? What's hard is customer centric and data driven. These are important words, and yet everyone says them as well. So is there a way you can maybe get that point across in a way that's meaningful to you? This is all very hard to do concisely, by the way, takes a little time. But those were my quick thoughts, but I thought that was an amazing start. I would say keep practicing it, and just don't be afraid to use transition words, right? So my background is in, my strengths are in terms of the direction, people want to know what you're excited to work on. They really, really do, you know, like, why are you here, right? And what's beautiful about the direction, by the way, you don't really want to tailor that just to what that interview is. You actually want to be authentic with like, what are you aiming to do next in your career? And that's such a beautiful moment where they're listening for what they have, you're saying what you want, and that's a moment where that click, you can hear that click. But you don't want to be overly obvious with like, I'm just describing your role. You want to show that you genuinely know what work is motivating and interesting to you, because if they believe that you're both skilled and a fit and interested, that's really what they want, right? So it's a moment to share, what you want next. Maybe you just want to grow in certain areas. Maybe you're interested in trying some new things. It's like, what work do you want to do, right? Yeah. You have to practice being brief with it, but it's a really great moment to say, when people ask you, why are you interested? Or what do you want to do in 5 years? This is a way to sort of circumvent that by being authentic with, I know where I want to go, right? And that's a beautiful way to start sharing that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I did have in there before that I'd love to work on products that make a meaningful impact. So whether they're in sustainability or health tech, those kinds of products.
Great. And I would be specific to say sustainability, health tech, or whatever else, even if you have 3 or 4 or 5 of them. But a lot of people say, I want to be in a mission-driven company. I want to create impact. Every company has a mission and every company creates some impact. So when you're thinking about industry, there's a difference between the role I want and the industry. Industry, it's like, what kind of product or service? Who do I want to help? What kind of impact do I want to have? So it's interesting, when you have really great clarity, again, you're not going to narrow in, you're just going to show them what you care about. And that's a beautiful thing, right? So this was great. Wonderful. I think, is Haley next, Hunter? I want to make sure
Yes, we do have Haley, and I want to also applaud Claudia for being brave and being our first guinea pig. You did a fantastic job. That was absolutely great. And like seeing Rachel in action, like Rachel and I have done so many talks together, but this is the first time I'm seeing her like work with people. And this is so cool. You just got a free sesh with Rachel. So cool. Yeah, it's real. It's real. Okay, Haley, I'm going to unmute you, or have to unmute you. There you are. Haley, welcome to the stage.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump into it, I guess.
perfect.
It's a little too long, but I guess that's what we're here for. Okay. I am a marketing and executive assistant that brings in strategic planning and managing and process. Nope. Okay, let me start over. I'm a marketing and executive assistant that brings in strategic planning and process organization across the finance, marketing, and branding industries. I'm wonderful at taking multiple moving parts and then bringing them seamlessly together while flowing in some creativity. My ability to timely navigate information between clients and team members brings a level of organization, efficiency, and happiness. I'm motivated by helping bring clarity and ease into the workplace.
Love that. Wow. Okay. Amazing. I stopped taking notes because I was just trying to listen. So my quick thoughts are, for your title, so you say marketing and executive assistant, but I'm wondering, do you mean like a marketing assistant or a marketing coordinator / executive assistant? Or like, I'm curious if that's like one title or 2 titles in your mind, and just be thoughtful, because on a resume, again, if this can get picked up by ATS, I would maybe play around with the upfront title it's one thing how you say it out loud, but I'm picturing also the written, and I want you to be super clear as to like who you are, basically, right? So I was curious about that. And then I loved how you had so many authentic words. Like, this was such an amazing example, as like, who you are. I think we can maybe grammatically like make the like, you probably had about 3 sentences of your strengths. Could I maybe help you make that into 1? Probably. But what I loved was like the word happiness at work, or like clarity and ease, or I'm wonderful at, like, just say the truth of how you feel. And if you have self-awareness about yourself, let that shine through, because there's only so many different ways we can all say our work strengths, but that was such an amazing way to have somebody read or listen to something that wasn't just like, I'm a great communicator. Like that was so authentically specific as to like who you are in the team and like the role that you play and all these like wonderful things, which by the way, were great skills you want an executive assistant to have. I don't know if I heard really the direction. I think you said I'm motivated by, but it'd be nice to hear what type of work you really want to do next. If you're job searching, it's like what roles or industries, like what do you want to do? Not so broad and vague, but like, tell me, like, do you want an executive assistant title? Because I realize it's a little confusing if you're like, I'm an executive assistant and I'm also searching for this title. But guess what? That's even better because you're basically telling them, I've done this and this is exactly what I want to be doing, which is like the person they want to hire anyway. So I realize it like sounds a little weird, but say you're searching from the same thing you've done before, you would just tell them like, either it's a moment to concisely say like, what are you really looking for different? Like maybe you want a bigger organization, or maybe you want to try a different industry, or maybe you just want a role with greater challenges and growth. So maybe you want the same title, but like, is there something else a little different that you can explain what you're looking for? Okay. But I thought that was like really, really, really great. Those are my like quick thoughts. But yeah, I think the strengths, you know, maybe those 3 sentences we could formulate a little cleaner so you could get all those strengths across maybe in like just 1 sentence, but you have so much good meat there. And then it's just a matter of like organizing it and cleaning up like how it comes across, but so much good stuff in that.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've been kind of struggling with is the title. So I'm glad you brought that up. So it is essentially, it is what you're saying where it's, you know, I do marketing, I'm a marketing coordinator, but I also have the skill set to provide executive assistance.
So here's what I would say is decide, not that those are so different, but like, do you prefer one of those titles? How do they differ? And do you prefer one over the other? And I realize sometimes people want to just open themselves up to different directions, but I feel like those are similar to each other. And I understand why you could probably do one or the other. But I think for your, like for job search efficiency, I think it helps to just figure out like, which direction do I want to go in? Or is there a way of phrasing it slightly more broadly where it becomes clear? Like, for example, Claudia did product leader. And so is there a creative way where you get across the fact that you are sort of a coordinator / assistant person that could be applied to different sort of teams or something like that? So there's ways we could play around with it, but it's just food for thought. The title is interesting and it reflects a lot. These few words are kind of like, who am I and where am I trying to go? And it's a moment to make it clear to somebody how you want them to see you, right? So be wary of the fear of like, am I closing myself off versus like, what do I want? And am I making that clear? And it's okay to decide. You're not closing yourself off. If somebody needs help and they look at the rest of your resume, they're going to reach out, even if you didn't say this one little tiny word.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hunter, should we keep going with this or do you want to do like, yes?
I think so. This is fantastic, right? Okay, so we have 3 more volunteers too. This is such a lively one. I believe Brennan is next. So we're going to go to Brennan and then Angela and then Marina. Okay. Brennan, I'm going to unmute you here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And we
Awesome.
can see you. Hello.
Great. Hi. So this is a fun one for me because I work in career services in a community college and I'm great at helping other people, but not myself. So I was happy to be a guinea pig and let you pick through what I just created just a little bit ago.
Well, every coach needs a coach, by the way.
Yes, yes. So I left some blanks because I don't know what to put in there right now, but I started fresh just now with the prompts that you gave. So I have career services professional with expertise in career development, program management, and leadership across social services and academia. I am particularly great at something because I leverage my something. I am motivated by professional development roles within academia or, depending on the job I would apply for, community college leadership. So I would tailor it there, but I don't know what I would put in those blanks.
Yeah. And now I'm seeing it in the written version. So I think this is a great start. I think in your first sentence, I think you can add a tiny bit more, because career development could mean a lot of things. I imagine
Right.
you mean like career coaching development,
So I do.
right?
So here's the thing. This
Yeah.
is not to cut you off, but here's the thing. This is where it gets hard at. So I have been a career counselor for 3 years. I just moved into being a career services manager. So there are a lot of different things that come with both of those. So it's trying to figure out
Well,
what
I
is the
would
one or
still,
two
so
things.
instead of getting more broad, here's what I
Mhm.
would do. So you've done
Okay.
counselor and now you're doing manager. Break
Mhm.
each of those down on paper into like I always think about roles like a pie chart. So any
Okay.
given role is probably between 4 and 7 main slices. So what are the slices? And then you should still be specific, but you're going to cherry pick the ones that you actually want to highlight. So, you know, it's a balance of being comprehensive, but also choosing, like, do you want to do coaching in your, or counseling in your future? And you could obviously represent that with such a big part. So you could say counseling, team management, program management. It's okay. So there's a balance of like, when you say it out loud versus in writing, but I think most people can get away with 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 of these, because you're going to list them. The reason you prepare ahead of time is so you can easily just say, I have expertise across A, B, C, D, and E. When you say that with your tone, and because you've practiced it, it doesn't come across as too much. So specify on paper beforehand, and then you could decide which ones do I want to highlight. But career development to me is very broad, and I'm just not sure, does that mean counseling or does that mean something else, right? And then leadership, I might say team oversight or team management or team building teams, hiring teams, overseeing teams. I would be like even more specific, because leadership could mean a lot of different things. But in this case, you're kind of basically saying, I do people management, I do team management, or whatever you're saying, right? In terms of the strengths, look, we need to probably talk more to understand who you are and what you're all about and what you're great at. And that sentence number 2, it's knowing yourself, but it's also like, what do you want to do going forward? And sometimes we need more time and reflection to answer that. So it's a little hard to do quickly here today, but that takes a tiny bit more time and discussion.
No, this was great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Cool.
Okay, so
yeah.
good, Brennan. Thank you for stepping up. Very excited for your journey. Okay, Angelia, is that how you say your name?
Angelia, close.
Angelia, so close. Welcome. Hi, how are you today?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Good. Oh, we're doing great. I'm having so much fun. You have no idea. I'm like, this is so great.
Cool. All right, Angelia, let's hear what you got.
Hi, I'm Angelia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a research assistant and I'm working for nonprofits in the housing and community building area. Oh no.
It's okay.
I work well with the numbers side of communities and nonprofits. I've always been good at gathering, working with and presenting data, and working through systems processes. I think I excel in these areas. I've got a very analytical mind, but the presentation of data works well because I have a background in graphic design and the arts. I'm looking to move into a data analysis role in the environmental, preferably hydrology sector, or education.
Amazing. Love this. Beautiful. Also, by the way, everyone should pay attention to their pace, their tone, their volume, articulation. I mean, it's not just the words, but it's also all the rest of how we come across. So that was great pace, and a great length too. Like it's a happy balance of like, you're being concise, we're not being long-winded. So that was great. In terms of your first sentence, when you say research assistant, nonprofits, housing, community building area, I would love some more functional skills. So like you're telling me your title and you're telling me across what areas, but like as a research assistant, like tell me like you have expertise across, what, like, I don't know, the data stuff, research, like quantitative, qualitative surveys. I don't know, I'm making it up, but just tell me like 2, 3, 4, 5 of those like words that like truly summarize your core areas of expertise. When you started going into your strengths, like that was amazing, because you know what the beauty is about that second sentence? Like I can just tell that you're telling me the truth. Like I can hear that it's so authentic. Like you were literally just describing you, and that becomes so clear to me because you had really unique phrasing, like what I'm natural at, or you said what I've done well at, or what I've always done well. Some of these clue words give confidence as to you have that self-awareness, and maybe you've even gotten feedback on those things. So you'd be surprised as to the little words you can say that really prove what you're saying is real. And I just love that, and I thought you explained it in a good way. And I can tell that you organized your thoughts because you said gathering with, working with, and presenting data. So like all of a sudden, like when you start like listing things, I'm like, someone spent time to organize their thoughts, and it makes it easier to digest, right? So that was wonderful. And then you made it really clear what you're looking for. So I thought that was great. I just want to hear a little more on the first sentence. And then at first, when you were saying the numbers side, I was hoping you would get more specific, because the numbers obviously could mean so many different things, but then you did explain it. But I might say something more like, the quantitative side of things. I wonder what you can say, because at first I was like, what do you mean by that? And then you explained it, but that's just food for thought. But I thought that was great.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have one more volunteer, which I think is kind of perfect timing, because what we might, if you think so, Rachel, we could have one more volunteer, and then if anyone has any questions that they want to ask.
Totally. And if you guys have questions, pop them in the chat. Like we'll definitely pay attention. But yeah, I think Marina, wait, where are we next?
I think
Marina,
it's
right?
Marina. Let me find you and unmute you. This is one of my favorite chats, I have to say. This is just, I love how everyone is jumping in boldly, fearlessly. It's so awesome. Welcome, Marina.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much. And thank you, Claudia. I already adjusted mine because I'm also a product manager. Product leader with experience in product strategy, solution building and implementation, business, data and system analysis, vendor and client integrations for consumer-facing and enterprise products for both startups and Fortune 500 company. Strength in communicating customer needs clearly amongst varied stakeholders, translating vision into actionable strategy, using data to build delightful products, analytical and problem-solving skills, and building effective customer-centric teams. Motivated by opportunities to build impactful products.
Okay, good. Were you reading?
Yes.
Okay. So keep in mind, when we're on virtual interviews, oftentimes we like to have notes in front of us, but whenever you're on an interview, put all your notes away, because you might not know that the person knows, but I always know when someone's reading, okay? So I think that was fine for me to understand for today, but just remember, whenever you're in an interview or even networking, whatever prep you've done beforehand is more than enough. Be there, be with the person, be authentic, be genuine, and say whatever you can say, because they'll be able to tell that you're being natural and you're focused and you're mindful of that conversation. So just be wary of any reading for today. It's totally okay. I thought that was really good. Also, just be wary, and this is for everyone, because I gave you guys this framework, but remember, I made this framework up. So that means your listener doesn't know the framework. So what that means is, instead of just saying like strengths in, you have to remember, like, introduce the idea. They have no idea where you're going to go next. So you could say something like what I'm really great at, or even just saying my strengths are, but like make sure there's a difference. I realize in the written version, it just said strengths, but that's because on a resume, you can be a little more abbreviated. But when you're talking out loud, you're going to use those full phrases and explanations, right? So just remember, like, they don't know your structure. You're going to introduce that structure. And then just be a little wary of like analytical, problem solving, impactful products. These are words that a lot of people say, and you might mean it, but I would challenge you to really go deeper. What about you is so analytical? Or what do you like to analyze, right? Or problems, same thing. What types of problems? Or how do you go about solving them? Or with who, right? And impactful products. Like I've seen product folks do something where it's like, what does impactful mean? Does it mean that users love it? Does it mean that it drives engagement? Does it mean that it drives, downloads? I don't know, like, so it's tough because these phrases do mean something, but be wary of commonly used phrases. That's all, right?
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the volunteers. If there's anyone that wants to squeeze one in, just drop it in the chat. I got a question, Rachel, that I think is great because you covered so much today. This has been so fantastic. Someone asked, do you have different suggestions for writing a summary when unemployed, or I'm going to add in having taken time off? I'm currently trying to re-enter the workforce from a career break.
No, because guess what? You just want them to focus on what you want them to focus on. And that is your value as a person and your skills and your traits. Maybe if you're doing upskilling, so say you're pursuing some sort of course and training while you're getting back into the workforce, maybe you add that, but you don't need to call out that you've been on a break. Like we get judged enough for things. So like leave out that. If they want to ask you about your timeline and your journey, you can tell all the reasonable reasons that you've done all the things you're doing and why you're getting back into the workforce. But I would remember you're using this airtime to drive their focus on all the good, meaty stuff about what you can deliver and drive value for them. So remember, you're driving their focus with whatever you choose to say. So it's not that taking a break or re-entering the workforce is bad by any means, but let's get the conversation to be all about your potential and your value and your skills and all of that kind of stuff. If they have a question about your journey and your time off, you can answer that. That's my quick thoughts on that.
Awesome. Well, that was a power hour with Rachel Serwetz and all of you. So that was so good. Give yourselves a digital round of applause and Rachel a round of applause. So good. Rachel, any closing thoughts and how can folks stay connected with you, keep the party going, and maybe continue on with you in other ways in this front?
I always offer a free initial chat, so definitely reach out. My website has a ton of free resources, videos, meditations, downloadables, blogs, you name it. Reach out if there's something I didn't answer and I can write a blog about it. Like I'm happy to always build free resources. My socials always have videos. LinkedIn, I'm always active on there, and I always come back to Power to Fly as well. So stay in touch. I always try to run at least 1 or 2 free webinars a month, and just let me know how I can help. And just know there's always support out there for you. All of the career development that you're doing is good, and just I know it can be a lot, it can be stressful, but you will get there with all these incremental improvements. Even putting in the time today was wonderful. So stay in touch, and I'm sure we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah, let's all give ourselves a nice pat on the back, a warm hug, and thank you again, Rachel. This was so much fun. Let's do more like this. I'm here for this.
Me too.
Right? Okay, cool. All right, everybody.